Okay, so now I'm going to go over the addition or subtraction of fractions with different denominators. What is it? What are the steps that we need to take? This is a part where adding or where combining fractions gets annoying, it gets more complex. So if you have any questions, if there's still any point of confusion, please go ahead and send me an email, or you can also meet with me during the office hours, which is Mondays and Wednesdays from 5:45 p.m. to 10:45 p.m. So the first thing that we need to do is to find the least common denominator. What is the least common denominator? Well, we want to find that common number that we can have in the denominator, but pretty much the smallest one. And by finding the smallest one, we save ourselves time from having to reduce the fractions over and over again. So there are two different methods to find the LCD. We can also call it the least common multiple of the two values. So it can also be the least common multiple. And remember, a multiple, it's pretty much a value that is in the times table of a number. So one of the answers in the times table of a number. For instance, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, all of those are multiples of the number 2 because all of those are products or answers in the times table of 2. So one of the ways to finding the least common denominator is to find the least common multiple between the two numbers. So let's say we have the fractions 1/8 and the fraction 7/12. So now keep in mind that we are only looking at the denominators. So we have 8 and 12, they're not common, so we need to find the LCD. So what we can do is we can go ahead and list the multiples, right, of each of the numbers. So for instance, for 8, we have 8 times 1 equals 8, 8 times 2 is 16, 8 times 3 is 24, 8 times 4 is 32, 8 times 5 is 40, and it keeps going. Now for 12, we have 12 times 1 is 12, 12 times 2 is 24, 12 times 3 is 36, 12 times 4 it's 48, and it keeps going. So from here we can see that the least common multiple in this case will be 24, right? So that means that the LCM or the LCD equals 24. So that means that at one point, in order for us to add the two fractions, we need to convert the 8 into 24 and the 12 into 24. Okay, but I'm going to get to that later. First, I want you guys to see how to find that LCD. Now, the second method, we're going to be talking about prime factorization. So basically what we covered on the first slides of the presentation. So the second method is doing prime factorization. Now remember that prime factorization means finding all the factors that are prime from the numbers, right? So I'm going to use the same example. So it's 1/8 plus 7/12. And again, we're only looking at the 8 and the 12, only the denominators. We're ignoring the numerators for right now. So let's go ahead and break both numbers into primes, so into prime factors, and I'm going to use the prime trees. So 8 means 2 times 4. Now 2 is a prime, so I'm going to circle it. 4, it's not a prime. I can still break it down. So 4, it's 2 times 2. So I usually circle the primes just so I know, like visually, that I cannot break those numbers apart anymore. Now for 12, we have 3 times 4, and we know that 3 is a prime. And then we have 4, which is 2 times 2. and 2 and 2 are prime numbers. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and write down the prime factorization of each of the numbers that I have. So 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. And then 12 was 2 times 2 times 3. Now, the LCD, it's composed of all the different factors, so different value factors that we have in both prime factorizations. So our LCD, it's going to have 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. Now, what is that 2 times 2 times 2 coming from? Where if you notice, in both prime factorizations, we have the number 2. Here, the number 2 is repeated only twice, right? However, on the first one, on 8, 2 is repeated 3 times. So you want to take the maximum number of times that a number is repeated. So that's the reason why we're doing the number 2 3 times. So in the LCD, you take the maximum number of times a factor is repeated. So our LCD, it's going to be 2 times 2 times 2 times 3, which is 24. So we got the same answer as before, right? As with the other method, this one is just a little bit different. So if you remember your times tables, then the first method is going to come easier for you. If it's easier for you to break down the numbers into simpler numbers, then the second method will be working better for you. I don't prefer any of the two. If you do both or any of them, I'm okay with that. But this is the two methods in which you can find the least common denominator. Okay? So now I'm going to go ahead and add the two fractions. So let me go ahead and put this line. So we had 1 over 8 plus 7 over 12. Now we found out that the least common denominator is 24. That means we want the two denominators to be 24. So we want these two guys to be 24. So what do we do to make the denominators 24? Where we're going to use multiplication. So here 12, we know, times 2 gives you 24. If we multiply the bottom, we multiply the top. And then 8 times 3 gives you 24. If we multiply the bottom, we multiply the top as well. Okay? So this is going to give us 3 over 24 plus 14 over 24. Now we have the same denominators, which is what we wanted, right? So now we have those 24s, and we can combine the two numerators. So in this case, it will be 3 plus 14, which is 17 over 24. And that will be our answer for the addition of 1 over 8 plus 7 over 12.